Welcome to CBS News New York's Black History Month special, Preserving New York's Black History. I'm Alan Devlin. Black history is New York history. The Big Apple is ripe in diversity, culture, and technology. Everywhere you look, you see how African Americans help shape and mold the city that's filled with iconic attractions. One attraction in particular is Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. It's located on the Upper West Side and is host to more than 5 million visitors annually. But did you know that long before it existed, the land it sits on was known as the San Juan Hill neighborhood, a community filled with rich African American and Caribbean culture, and was the home to many musical greats. But in the 50s, the vibrant neighborhood was part of a large-scale urban renewal project that led to the demolition of the neighborhood and the displacement of its residents.
I think it's really interesting for me that neighborhoods can just get wiped out, that it's gone.
A past filled with culture, music, and diversity erased, replaced by Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts.
It was a neighborhood that was poor, but at times it was a majority black neighborhood, times it was a majority Puerto Rican neighborhood, times it was a majority Irish neighborhood. But the arts and life flourished there.
A community located between West 57th to 65th Street. It stood for over 100 years and was home to thousands of families. Director Stanley Nelson is telling their stories in his new documentary, San Juan Hill, Manhattan's Lost Neighborhood.
What was San Juan Hill at its core? What made it tick?
It became this neighborhood that was a real mix of cultures and people. And I think that's one of the things that made it unique.
The history of San Juan Hill is the history of Black folks in New York City.
Dr. Vanessa K. Valdez is a scholar, author, and former professor who has extensively researched San Juan Hill.
You have not only people living here, you have bars, you have clubs, you have churches, you have associations.
Tenements and candy stores, a couple of grocery stores.
Libraries, right? Nurses who are going to check on people, doctors, everything you could think of was thriving here.
T.S. Monk grew up in San Juan Hill and had a front row seat to the magic of the community. His father, legendary jazz pianist Thelonious Monk, was one of San Juan Hill's finest.
Thelonious Monk was the father of modern jazz. And without a Thelonious Monk, you don't get Miles Davis. You don't get John Coltrane.
And other musicians like James P. Johnson, who created the dance craze known as the Charleston, called the streets of San Juan Hill home.
And 63rd Street Playhouse was around the corner, and that's where Noble Sissel and Huey Blake mounted the play Shuffle Along.
The neighborhood was everything, until it wasn't. In the 1950s, the city of New York, alongside billionaire John D. Rockefeller Jr. and urban planner Robert Moses, known as the Power Broker, set their sights on a new gateway to culture, Lincoln Square. At the heart of it, Lincoln Center. To make it happen, San Juan Hill was designated as a slum, giving the city the legal right to step in.
The politicians called it urban renewal. But in the African American community, we called it urban removal.
Robert Moses spoke about urban renewal during a 1963 interview for CBS Reports.
For some parents, the most unpleasant thing I ever was in, and the only thing that I've got out of that I was glad to get out of.
Was it designated as a slum correctly?
At the time, it wasn't a slum, which is why Robert Moses had to redefine it, stretch it, wage a PR campaign.
By the end of the 1950s, the destruction of San Juan Hill began. Protests and petitions in the streets of San Juan Hill. Everyday people band together to push back against getting pushed out.
These were thought of as people that couldn't fight back. They have no power.
I was angry like the people who had gotten evicted. I was angry like the people on the other side of Amsterdam Avenue.
He's referring to the tenants who lived in the Amsterdam houses, now separated by a wall. On the other side is where 7,000 people once lived.
Do you think we, as in collectively New Yorkers, are doing enough to remember San Juan Hill?
I don't think you can do too much. So I think that, what Lincoln Center and others are doing is great. But can we do more? Yeah, let's do more.
One step the Lincoln Center has already taken can be seen on the side of David Geffen Hall. A mural of colorful squares depict the vibrance of that forgotten neighborhood. They are also actively seeking input from community members to reimagine the Amsterdam Avenue side of the campus.
I believe if Lincoln Center wants that relationship is there to be had. I have no doubt.
Opening up the back of Lincoln Center and making it grand like the front of Lincoln Center is a wonderful thing. And it will be a great thing for the neighborhood and for all New Yorkers, you know, for everybody.
The Legacies of San Juan Hill is a project funded by the Lincoln Center that provides a platform to explore the history of the neighborhood in its fullest. Ahead on Preserving New York's Black History.
It's easy to understand how they become trailblazers in their field.
We introduce you to two sisters who left their mark on Brooklyn, one in medicine, the other in education. And putting the spotlight on Black playwrights, directors, musicians, and actors, a closer look at the New York exhibit focused on Black storytellers. We honor Shirley Chisholm, a political pioneer from New York. She was the first African-American woman elected to Congress and the first to campaign for the Democratic Party presidential nomination back in 1972. Last year, on what would have been her 100th birthday, New York City's Council's Committee on Civil and Human Rights declared November 30th Shirley Chisholm Day. From a political giant to the story of two Brooklyn sisters who rose up to become trailblazers, decades ahead of their time, Hannah Klieger shows us how they led the way for Black women in medicine and education.
A peaceful playground in Williamsburg bears the name of Sarah J.S. Tompkins Garnett. 2 miles away in Dumbo is a park named after Susan Smith McKinney Stewart. These are not the only places you can see their names. A school in Fort Greene and another in Prospect Heights are also named after them. So who were these women who left such a mark on Brooklyn?
It's easy to understand how they become trailblazers in their field and also become national and even international symbols of what Black women are capable of.
Dr. Susan Smith McKinney Stewart was the first Black woman to practice medicine in New York State.
She's working as a teacher, and it's her own income that is paying her way through medical school.
Her older sister, Sarah Garnett, the first Black woman to become principal of a New York City public school.
It has everything to do with the special circumstances of Brooklyn's Black community, and specifically Weeksville, that is creating such excellence.
Dominique Jean-Louis is chief historian at the Center for Brooklyn History. She says you don't have to leave the borough to understand their desire to forge their own path. They were born to Sylvanus Smith, a prosperous hog farmer in Weeksville, Brooklyn, one of the first free Black communities in the United States, founded in the 1830s.
The world they're growing up in is a world of Black uplift, right, where people are not only trying to do well for themselves, trying to achieve in a world that has obstacles that are specific to Black people, but they're also trying to uplift their neighbors.
Regina Robbins is tour educator at Weeksville Heritage Center.
People were drawn here not merely by economic necessity, but also by a desire to be a part of a majority Black community.
Dr. McKinney Stewart specialized in childhood disease, co-founded a hospital, and later in life ventured out west. Her great-granddaughter is the late actress Ellen Hawley, America's first Black soap opera star who died in 2023.
It's very special when somebody recognizes your work.
Both sisters were also involved in the women's suffrage movement and helped create the Equal Suffrage League, which worked to abolish race and gender discrimination in the late 1880s.
Once abolition was achieved, a lot of those allies kind of went away. So women like Sarah and Susan took it upon themselves to take up the mantle.
Among the idyllic hills of Brooklyn's historic Greenwood Cemetery are two graves steps away from each other, the resting place of both sisters who forged a family of firsts. In Weeksville, Brooklyn, Hannah Klieger, CBS News, New York.
Another Brooklyn great is responsible for what millions of New Yorkers do every single day: take the subway. Transportation reporter Elijah Westbrook shows us how one man's multiple inventions are playing a massive role in our lives.
Whether you take the train or love riding roller coasters, there are forms of essential technology invented by Granville T. Woods that some likely don't pay attention to unless they're looking for it. This here is one of them.
This piece right here, and this is that contact shoe technology.
Wow, okay. Normally, you wouldn't want to touch such a dangerous electrical device that can collect upwards of 700 volts of electricity. But Conchetta Bensavenga, director of the New York Transit Museum, gave me a behind-the-scenes look from an unpowered perspective.
Granville T. Wood's sort of idea, which he actually tried out, #1 on roller coasters and #2 in Brooklyn.
Isn't that something?
Yes, this is why we love to talk about him, was to take a piece that would actually go to a live source of electricity, in this case a live third rail, and act as the contact, grab the electricity, drive it into the engine, and power the machine.
And that's how many of today's subways operate. Woods was born April 23, 1856 in Columbus, Ohio, to free African-American parents who held various engineering and industrial jobs. We're told he moved to Brooklyn nearly 20 years later, taking courses in engineering and electricity. Subjects, historians say, were the keys to his close to 60 patented inventions. They include what's called the synchronous multiplex railway telegraph, a way for moving trains and the stations themselves to communicate.
So something invented back in the 1800s, early 1900s is essentially the catalyst to what we're seeing play out in today's transit system.
That's right.
He also invented this device here. It's called the dead man's handle, and it automatically slows the train down if an operator becomes incapacitated.
And before the cyclone here at Coney Island, there was the figure-8 electric roller coaster he invented in 1892. Historians say Woods faced harsh resistance to his inventions because of his race, and some of his patents were stolen by competitors, including Thomas Edison.
Edison and Granville T. Woods did actually end up in court quite a bit.
Wow.
And Granville T. Woods won his cases. Edison tried to erroneously accuse Granville of stealing his patent.
Okay.
But, you know, Granville T. Woods came with receipts, and he said, here are all my drawings.
Wood's inventions are prolific, and he was often described as the Black Edison. But unlike Thomas Edison, Woods was fortunate to receive an education during this time, as few black children ever saw the inside of a classroom. We're told Woods passed away in 1910 from smallpox. So the next time you see a moving subway train or roller coaster, think of Granville T. Woods, a pantheon of great inventors who transformed how we experience facets of daily life. In Brooklyn, Elijah Westbrook, CBS News, New York.
Ahead on preserving New York's Black history, you can't talk about the City of Dreams without mentioning Broadway.
It's very moving and touching to me.
After the break, immerse yourself in the Black stories that make up Broadway. And it was home to historic celebrities from Lena Horne and James Brown to Jackie Robinson and Joe Louis, the legends of Addisley Park, and why it was once called Black Hollywood East. Welcome back. The Apollo Theater in Harlem was recognized with a special Kennedy Center honor last year. It became the first institution to receive this honor. Now to New York's Theater District and a special exhibition on Black storytellers. Playwrights, directors, musicians, and actors are in the spotlight. Dave Carlin covers arts and entertainment and takes us inside to learn the history, feel the joy, and see the inspiration.
Shuffle Along from 1921, a bold Broadway landmark.
That's Shuffle.
Our guide is Amber Iman, a Tony-nominated performer who was in the 2016 Shuffle Along, based on the original.
Shuffle Along is historical for many reasons. The first time a jazz score was on Broadway, the first time black people were singing about their love for each other, not their love of Dixie, not their love of picking cotton. Back in the day, people risked their lives to tell stories about black love. That, to me, is mind-blowing.
Celebrated in this space are pioneers, rising stars, legends, and icons.
August! He is it because of the way he's figured out how to capture what it meant to be black in each one of these time periods, the struggle, the joy, the light, the life. And Tazaki Shange, what did For Color Girls do for all of us? I love Michael R. Jackson and the work he's done. It's not easy. He's also a table shaker. Me and Jeremy, a lot of people didn't know what to feel or didn't know what to think, but you were feeling and you were thinking. George he's one of the greatest to ever do it. But from Colored Museum to Jellies to Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk.
To Gypsy.
To Gypsy. Everything he touches feels like a love letter to blackness.
More love letters from visionary women working today, including Susan Laurie Parks, Dominique Morisseau, and Lynn Nottage.
Lynn tells the truth in a way that we don't get enough of. MJ the Musical and Sweat and Clyde, like, not a lot of people can do what she does, and she does it so well.
slides and sweat.
Nottage was at the launch party at the Museum of Broadway.
Looking at the playwrights who were instrumental in me even wanting to begin to write and being part of that journey is quite beautiful. I think that more than ever, we're going to need our storytellers.
Included are these costumes, with this one worn by Wendell Pierce in a groundbreaking revival of Death of a Salesman, with casting that made the classic richer.
To hear it in a different voice, it illuminates it in a new way. I remember what it felt like to don this coat, you know, playing Willie Loman on Broadway. It's very moving and touching to me.
Of course we know who this is. That's Cynthia Erivo. I don't even have to look down. That's Color Purple. And that's Kara. Is that Pearly Victorious? The way I don't even have to read. That's Kara.
I feel really grateful. These are like giants of storytelling, and I feel really honored to be amongst that.
Iman concluded our tour with 2 final stops.
Darryl Waters is musician supreme, MD, supervisor, conductor.
It's telling the stories that you normally do not hear and finding ways to inspire people to hopefully create their own great stories.
I'm even more excited about where we're going to go and what's coming up with new stories we have to tell and excite and evoke emotion out of people.
Jocelyn Beal, we co-founded Black Women on Broadway together, and she understands our voice. My personal mantra that I live with is we must lift as we climb. And I believe and I know that I'm only here because others reached down and gave me a hand and gave me an opportunity.
Explore not only the new exhibition, but galleries on floors above. Experience the openness, authenticity, and bravery of artists who changed Broadway and the world for the better. At the Museum of Broadway, Dave Carlin, CBS News, New York.
Now we head to a Queens neighborhood that was once dubbed Black Hollywood East for its many celebrities. Elle McLogan shows us how the landmark historic district of Addisley Park endures as a symbol of resilience and pride.
She was raised on a farm in North Carolina, but when 98-year-old Ruth Harrell Wade moved to Addisley Park, Queens in the 1960s, it didn't take long to adjust.
I was really not coming to a strange place. It was like coming home.
She and her daughter, Lisa Wade, say the area lived up to its glittering reputation.
The neighborhood was beautiful. I'd always heard of it because I like jazz.
Musicians from James Brown to Lena Horne, sports stars Jackie Robinson and Joe Louis all made a home in Addisley Park, a suburban sliver of St. Albans that became known as Black Hollywood East.
So we got to meet Illinois Jacquet. He was a member of my church, my parish.
They say Ella Fitzgerald loved to throw parties, and Count Basie opened his pool to the neighborhood kids.
It was a family, it became a family.
With stately homes and manicured lawns, the Black Enclave came to symbolize the American dream. But it wasn't always an inclusive place.
The first Black celebrities moved into the neighborhood. It was their agents and managers that would buy the property under another name.
Jason Antos with the Queens Historical Society says racist covenants kept the neighborhood exclusively white up until the Supreme Court overturned restrictions in 1948. In the years that followed, he says, African Americans moving in continued to endure hostility.
They were role models.
Claire Sarant wrote a book about St. Albans and Addisley Park. She says community resilience triumphed over racial barriers.
There were so many educators and lawyers and doctors.
Addisley Park and St. Albans, they represent generational wealth.
For Lisa Wade, the legend of Addisley Park is bigger than the legends who called it home.
The rest of the people that lived here are the important folks, people that lived and stayed here and worked and raised their families.
Through events and community spaces, she and fellow members of the Civic Association are working to maintain a spirit of unity and belonging.
The elders come down and they tell us stories about the neighborhood, and it keeps the story alive.
In Queens, Elle McLogan, CBS News, New York.
Ahead on preserving New York's Black history.
There's a lot of stuff that we're encountering that does not have much of a record beyond these walls.
We take you to the Schomburg Center in Harlem, a place that's been protecting New York's history for decades. One institute in Harlem is dedicated to the achievements of African Americans every single day of the year. As the Schomburg Center marks its 100th year in Harlem, reporter Jesse Mitchell shows us how a new generation of librarians is preserving history.
The hush inside Harlem's Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture holds space for the past to speak, home to more than 11 million items.
Haitian folktales read by Augusta Baker, who was the first Black woman hired as a children's librarian.
Anika Paris keeps watch over albums and video clips archived in the Moving Image and Recorded Sound Unit.
What does it take to preserve artifacts like this in today's world?
It takes money, it takes people. There's a lot of stuff that we're encountering that does not have much of a record beyond these walls. Arturo Schomburg front and center, and this is also Catherine Latimer, who was the first Black woman hired by the New York Public Library.
The pair started the Research Institute together 100 years ago with their team during the Harlem Renaissance, turning the 135th Street Library into the global resource it is today. Staff now painstakingly digitizing documents for anyone to access. Dr. Harold Weaver Jr. followed in his family of educators' footsteps. The historian launched Rutgers University's Africana Studies Department and created the Black Quaker Project to preserve the stories passed on to him.
I personally wound up in African American studies, perhaps partly influenced by the fact that Catherine Latimer and Benton Latimer gave us Black history books for Christmas.
Getting her start at the Schomburg makes way for Black and brown women who get their start at the Schomburg and then go on to do amazing things in the field of library work.
Cassidy Jones joined the Rare Book Archives team 4 months ago, carrying forward the work of predecessors like Latimer.
Black history is being made here every single day, and the fact that I get to contribute just by doing something I already love, it's really special.
She and her colleagues will continue caring for this collection for the community for the next century and beyond. In Harlem, Jesse Mitchell, CBS News, New York.
And that'll do it for our Black History Month special, Preserving New York's Black History. The next time you're out and about in the city, take the time to look around. You might just stumble upon a piece of greatness. Thanks for watching.